Hey guys, Philosopher here, and today we are discussing the best war offense teams for March of 2021. So, what we have in front of me and what you're looking at is my war offense tier list. It is linked in the description below, and of course, you can go to our Discord where you can discuss this offense tier list, discuss these teams, go on my stream that's also linked below. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to walk through each one of these teams on this list and talk to you about which teams to use them against, how best to utilize them, and how to build them. And I will show you my versions of each of these teams so you can learn how to use these teams well yourself. Okay? So the first team on this list is Black Order. One thing I just want to note is that none of these teams in my War Offense tier list incorporate Silver Surfer. I will show you as I go through the teams that I think could include Silver Surfer, but I think for right now he is better used on War Defense. More on that later. All right, for right now, I am going to still have Black Order as the number one team on this list, although I have to say that I debated whether or not to potentially put Shadowland above Black Order, but I think Black Order is still a team that really can beat almost any other team in the game. The only teams that Black Order really struggles with are teams that have Doom plus a lot of other threats. And really, other than that, Black Order beats everything. And in high-level wars, what ends up happening is that Black Order essentially is saved by players, and they're utilized for the toughest defenses. And essentially, drawing a Black Order on your war defense is essentially like a victory. You are using one of the very scarce resources that the other side has. This is your tactical nuke that could beat anything, and it is still right now the number one war offense team. Now, I will say this. They are trending down, and I've said that since the last stock watch that we've had, which I will also link below. But I think that nonetheless, they're going to be a good war offense team for quite some time. All right, the next team on my tier list is Shadowland. And I've already shown, you could take a look at the video that I will link below showing the Shadowland building guide. And I don't want to get too in-depth here, but Shadowland is an incredibly powerful team that can beat a lot of opponents. And it's going to be particularly important as more and more opponents have Doom. And that's because of White Tiger. So White Tiger needs to be the biggest character on the team, and she is going to move quickly. And what Shadowlands does well is they get a lot of speed bar on spawn, and they also move very quickly. They get extra speed from the Daredevil passive. As long as you have the right T4s, which are listed in that video link below, White Tiger will go first, and she can either kill a key enemy or she could disable them because her special, which is one of the most devastating attacks in the game, gets a 2-turn ability block in war only. So imagine using that against Doom. So really, this is going to be your Doom disabler, Doom killer kind of team. It's also going to be a team that is going to do great against other teams that have one key character that needs to be countered in order for the team to stop working. A character like, for example, Doc Ock or Marauders or something like that, where you want to take on the Doc Rock Sinister Six or the Marauders with Emma or something like that. Very powerful team. A lot of people have been asking me, will X Factor be better than this team? I think X Factor is going to be amazing and more versatile, but it'll be different than this team. This team is still going to be very, very useful when you have to go in and take out, let's say, a Doom before it takes a turn and make sure it gets disabled. So very, very powerful team. This is going to be a Tier 1 war offense team for quite some time. All right, let's go to the next team on our list. And this is a team you may not be familiar with. This is the Hydra 3.0 team. Now, unlike the other teams on this list in the Tier 1 that are very versatile, this team is built to beat one enemy entirely, and that is the Mercenaries. So the key to this team is that you run Baron Zemo, along who you're going to want to have a special and passive T-Forward, along with Grenadier, and you're going to have to make sure Grenadier is the highest damage on the team. He gets 10% extra damage from Red Skull's passive, 15% extra if Red Skull has a T4. So you're going to have to calculate that in, make sure he's the highest attack, which I've done here, and then you run Zemo, Grenadier, Winter Soldier, Red Skull, and then you run Drax or Red Guardian. Red Guardian is better, But in any event, the taunt on Drax or Red Guardian will make it so the Taskmaster doesn't steal immunity, which could potentially lose you the match. Otherwise, this is an easy win that punches up on Mercenaries every time. All right, the next one on the list is XForce. Now, XForce is also a very versatile team. For a long time, it was kind of the 1A to Black Order's, or 1B to Black Order's 1A. It was a team that could beat almost anything and more. It's fallen off slightly, but it is still awesome, particularly if you have a massive Negasonic and X-23. And I will say I'm planning to bring these two characters to level 80. I may bring them to Gear Tier 15, particularly X-23 at some point. But those are the two characters you need big. They will determine what happens with your X-Force. Now, if you're kind of noobish or newer player, you want to make, sometimes they make Deadpool really huge. That's the wrong approach for your X-Force. That's going to actually inhibit the size of your X-Force. What you want to have is a massive Negasonic that can take a lot of hits from the opponent's mercenaries, and then will use her ultimate, which is this massive warhead ability, to bring enemies down below 50%. Once they're below 50% health, X-23 gets extra speed bar from her passive, and she can go on a killing spree. That is essentially the way this team works. It's that 1-2 punch that wins the matches, and it can be used against a variety of opponents. It can be useful against mercenaries, Sinister Six, Marauders, and others. Now, you have to watch out, though, because if you have a big opponent, particularly opponents that have very large key figures on their team, like a Taskmaster or an Emma, they may not be able to beat them if your Negasonic and X-23 aren't huge. And really, you have to look at the size of these two characters versus the size of the key character on the defensive team. Okay, now let's take a look at the next team. Now, this team is a little bit interesting. It's a team that I came up with. I have a lot of videos kind of in the early days of this YouTube channel talking about how to use this team. And this is the X-Factor, Ultron, and Namor team. So what this does is it takes this overpowered duo of Longshot and Shatterstar and pairs them with two guys who don't really have a home. The fifth character can be a whole bunch of different ones. Squirrel Girl, Vulture, Shuri, or Drax or Red Guardian. And if you look at some of those old videos of mine, you'll see that I beat Marauders constantly. This team can beat Marauders consistently. So how does this team work? Why does this team work? Well, it works because Longshot has this ridiculous passive that gives tons of speed bar to them, and he does massive damage, way more than Black Bolt, because he takes so many turns and he has such a high damage over time due to all the turns that he takes. But he needs some time to get going. Well, the amazing thing is that if you need to have, by the way, the passives T forward for both of those characters. But then what you do is you need a Namor. I actually use a G12 Namor, but certainly he's better if he's larger. He does a ton of damage at Gear Tier 14. You want to have his ult, and you want to have his passive T forward. What it does, look at this, reduces speed bar of all targets by 50%, which gives the X-Factor time to get going. It slows down the Marauders even more, and they're already a slow team, to get going and to get rolling themselves, and then clearing all positive effects from each target. Ultron is a fantastic addition to that team, because what Ultron does is he creates more targets for Sinister to potentially clone, and that's all. Literally, I have a small Ultron. I will be upgrading him in the future now that he's getting red stars, but he just puts out some bots. Sinister sometimes clones the bots, and then and by the way, this is, of course, the key T4. I know many of you have him T4 at all, but I'm a newer player. Nonetheless, he also sometimes the mind trick will occur on a bot or something like that, or a bot will end up doing the attack on the mind trick. So definitely a key part of that team as well. And then these other characters that potentially could have a home on the team. Lately, I've been using Squirrel Girl because she just cleanses the slows that Emma puts on the team. There's also, you could use Shuri if you don't have a place for Shuri, just to provide some defense up and ability energy. You can also use Drax or Red Guardian, or you can use Vulture because he also slows down the enemy team. All right. Let's go back to our tier list. The next team on the tier list is going to be the Astonishing XMen. And, I have to say, The Astonishing X-Men are a fantastic team. They're also a team that, if they're big enough, can beat almost any team. And so you could really debate where exactly this team should be in the rankings. It's hard to pick them over X-Force or this X-Factor team, or even the Hydra 3.0. What I'll say is Hydra 3.0 and the X-Factor team are great at beating a specific counter, whereas X-Force and Astonishing X-Men are definitely more versatile. But I tend to use my Astonishing X-Men against a team like the Sinister Six, because they have summons that are very easy to kill for speed bar, and then they also have a limited ability to get rid of debuffs. You want to make sure you have an opponent that doesn't have tons of debuff removal, and also an opponent that you can get somebody nuked down to get some extra speed bar. But they're amazing. You want to have a huge bishop. That needs to be your biggest character. You want to make sure these two are large enough to stay alive. And then really, Iceman and Kitty Pryde are more or less filler on the team. All right, now let's go to our next team. And this is Fantastic Four plus Ultron. And this is what a lot of people use as their Marauders killer. I think it's fantastic. I think it's worse than using X-Factor with Ultron, because X-Factor can punch up higher and just as reliably. And then this frees up your Fantastic Four to be used on defense. So I think that is a better use of your Fantastic Four team. But nonetheless, this is a reliable Marauders counter. Some people still use Power Armor plus Ultron. That is not as good of a matchup, because it can sometimes fail if you get the wrong clone. Particularly, for example, if Rescue is cloned, that can be a huge problem for your team. Okay, now let's go back to the list. Going from that Marauders counter, now we're going to go to a team that has a little bit more flexibility, and that's the Symbiotes. I think almost all of you probably have a symbiote team of some kind. Are used to using the Symbiotes in Raid. They are very useful in war. In the past, they were focused on the Asgardians. Now they're used more against the Sinister Six. Sometimes they're also used on that Inhuman Shield team where you've got Coulson with Black Bolt and so forth. They definitely are a useful team still. And they are, I think, very, very powerful. But I will say this: unless there's a team that has a summon like the Sinister Six does, or the Inhuman Shield team, it's a team that I could see in the future becoming more hybridized. In other words, taking a character off of another team, whether it's Zemo or whether it's Doc Ock or something else, to make this team much more powerful. This team with, for example, Doc Ock can reliably beat Marauders or Black Order. Okay, the next team on this list is one that I don't use in war, but so many of my alliance mates do, and other players in top alliances, and that's the Hela Natural team. Hela Natural takes a character that many people, Hela, have built up but don't really use on war defense anymore, because the symbiotes have made it so Asgardians aren't useful. If you take Elsa off of the Supernatural team and you replace her with Hela, that team becomes very powerful, and they can be used with great effect, particularly against the Wave 1 Avengers, and they have massive punch-ups very reliably on a regular basis. Some people use Loki instead of Scarlet Witch on that team. That's inferior to the Scarlet Witch version, because you really want to have her extending your debuffs, and if she has a T4 on her special, that will also provide defense up to the team. Okay. Now let's go to the Uncanny X-Men team. This is actually a very useful team. It's a team that, of course, used to be the jack of all trades like the Black Order. This was the team that everyone used as their tactical nuke, maybe a year ago. But it's just fallen off quite a bit. And really the reason that it's fallen off is because Beast has been moved to the X-Men. So now Phoenix is not reliably getting offense up and speed up like she was getting from Beast. And so with Storm on the team, this team just doesn't do quite as well. They're not punching up the way that they used to. They're not nearly as useful against Mercs. This is a team that I use more. It's still useful against Mercs that don't have a massive Taskmaster, but it's really more useful against teams like Wave 1 Avengers or, whether there's still some Asgardian teams that are running around, or some of the lesser teams. This is now a team that, while I still run it on war offense, it's more of a team that I'm using against lesser war defenses rather than a team that I rely on a regular basis. Okay. Now let's go to the next team on our list, which is Doc Ock Sinister Six. Doc Ock and his team is really better used against defense. I do think that's going to change over time because, for example, Silver Surfer is great against Sinister Six. Axemen are great against Sinister Six. And really also, of course, the Symbiotes are great against Sinister Six. So they have more counters than they have in the past. But nonetheless, they're still better on defense. They're a very strong defense team, so I'd encourage their use there. But they are great if you use them on offense against Wave 1 Avengers. They can punch up massively against Wave 1 Avengers because that Doc Ock flip can just turn all those buffs into debuffs. All right, so now we're done talking about, I'd say, sort of the teams that I would consider to be the really, good top tier choices. And now we're kind of getting into teams that I think are, less exciting teams to run. X Factor is one example of a team that I think if you aren't going to run this team with Ultron and some other top choices to take on the real top offense teams, I think this is a team that, doesn't really have a home until you get Multiple Man and Polaris. Now, once Multiple Man and Polaris come out, I think that this team's going to be beating teams like the Marauders without the help of Ultron, without the help of Namor. But until that time comes, I think that this team needs something else, and that something else could also be Silver Surfer. So if you're using Silver Surfer on offense, and I recommend you use him on defense, we'll talk more about that in another video, I think this would be the team that I would run him in. I think this is a team, Longshot Shatterstar, Silver Surfer, and really any two others, support characters of the like that I told you before, should be able to beat the Marauders pretty reliably. Without Silver Surfer, they're very good, but they just take some time to get going, and so they really need some support characters to help them get going, and then they need to be matched up against a team that doesn't have tons of early disable and debuffs and things like that are going to slow down your dad bros, because once they get debuffed, unless they have a cleanse like Squirrel Girl or Emma or somebody like that with them, they can really get bogged down and your team can lose. All right, now we're going to get to the teams that really have seen their better days, okay? And so this is the Inhumans is the next team. And then the Uncanny XMen without Beast. So, here's the thing. Before on Tier 2, I was evaluating the Uncanny XMen with Beast because that team can actually beat the Mercs if you are punching down. For example, it can beat Wave 1 Avengers very reliably. It can punch down on the Axemen, for example. But without Beast, they're much weaker, as I said before. And the Inhumans are another team that have really seen their better days. This is a team that was awesome at countering a Red Skull Hydra when they had their heyday. It's also very good at countering the PIM team. It's countering Technerva, teams like that. But, those teams have really fallen off. They're not very important. Those are like Tier 4 defense teams. So it really just has seen its better days. And right now, I run Black Bolt, Yo-Yo, and Crystal on defense. And I think, many, many top players are doing the same thing. That team is better. Those three with Coulson and Fury is a better choice than running this full team. But nonetheless, they're sometimes necessary, whether it's to punch down on a Wave 1 team. Sometimes they can punch against a certain Sinister Six without a very large Doc Ock, although you're seeing less of those at high levels at least anymore. And it's certainly good against those lesser teams. It's certainly the best counter for a team like PIM or any team with Ghost or Technerva or something like that. Okay, now the next team on our list, well, that is going to be a team that is actually quite useful still, and I think still is going to have a home on war offense for quite some time because it is a very good one-trick pony, and that is the Brotherhood 2.0 team. So the Brotherhood 2.0 team is actually quite powerful because of this main kind of trick ability that Magneto has, where he gets tons of speed bar when he zones in, if he's on a full Brotherhood team, and then he can ult and blind everybody. So he's fantastic if he's punching down on the dad bros, the X Factor, because once they're blinded, they don't get going. If people are foolish enough to put a team like Symbiotes on defense, same thing. Really, any team that can't cleanse debuffs can, on a punch down, be handled by the Brotherhood 2.0. It's also good against all those lesser lights that we talked about, whether it's Technerva or Pym or things like that. It's certainly the number one counter, I would say, them and Inhumans to the Pym team. The issue is, Brotherhood 2.0 is still a lot of a one-trick pony. It's been heavily power crept. Magneto's been out for a long time. We've got a new character coming out that's basically as powerful or more powerful, I would say, actually with stats, more powerful than Magneto, Polaris, and she's not a legendary, right? So I think this team's good, but it's a team that's hard for me to recommend building up heavily at this point, and unfortunately, it needs to punch down right now to handle a lot of the counters that it has. All right, so now let's go to a team that I think, unfortunately, is, I think fallen off more than we would like, and that's the Power Armor team. I think a lot of people love this team. It definitely has a cool mechanic where it is, got a whole combo and whatnot. But unfortunately, the Power Armor team, I think what I would have to say is, you have no power here, Power Armor. They really are not consistent anymore. They can't beat opponents the way that they used to. It used to be that they were mopping up a lot of these lesser light teams, whether it's the Young Avengers or Guardians or Technerva or Defenders, but more and more players are putting those teams on the sidelines, and there's just not a lot at high levels that this team reliably defeats. And as I said, using Ultron with this team is just okay. And really, against Marauders, it's a good counter, but not a reliable one. It also is a team that requires a heavy T4 investment to really shine. You need to have a big Falcon and a big War Machine and a whole slew of T4s. And so I just would not recommend anyone to build this team up or rely on it at this point. And I think more and more players are putting this team on the sideline or just using it for cleanup, things like that. All right, now let's look at the bottom here. Wave 1 Avengers should be on defense. They can counter some lesser teams on offense, but they're really more of a defense team. And then here's these teams that really no one should be using other than, very random uses. Skill Military has been a complete disappointment, even with the T4s and the Big Punisher. They just are not reliable, and they can fail. They don't have any sustain, no way to cleanse debuffs outside of Red Guardian cleansing himself. They really are one-trick pony and require a big kill in the beginning, and they have some luck involved. So until the rework, which is coming next patch, I can't recommend them. Young Avengers is a team that pieces of them are used on defense or elsewhere, but it's just not strong enough of a team. Pym Tech is also pretty disappointing. Ghost is best used as a solo character or on a war defense to make it a little better. The rest of the team is pretty lackluster, but it can be run as filler on defense. And aim, a very big aim can be used to punch down on the X-Men if you stun Beast, but that's really the only use of aim. So look, as things come up, we're definitely going to have some change in this upcoming patch. As I said, Silver Surfer is going to change the meta, I think, entirely. And also, I think you should be on the lookout for now X Factor becoming a Tier 1 war offense team. A lot of people have asked me, should I build up X Factor or Shadowland? My answer would be, why not both? But if you're going to build up just one, I think X Factor is more versatile. It'll work better outside of war, but Shadowland's still going to be important and necessary for going after Doom. All right. This is our list for the month of March. If you like this list, you could check it out below. You could check out our Discord below. Please smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, go to our stream, go to our Discord, join our community so we can discuss more and learn more about the game.